Welcome to Beyond the Jump Points for May 2nd, 2025. This is a mini-series where I jump into what has happened in the verse and the PTU in the past week and really try to provide a summarized view for all of you who don't pay attention on a daily basis. Without further ado, let's jump into it. This week actually really started out on Wednesday. Before I jump into what happened on Wednesday, I just wanted to mention that the background video you're watching is actually a tour of the Idris. Now, the Idris tour is something that they've launched almost every single day this week, so I figured I would include it just for those people who haven't had an opportunity to actually walk through it yet, as well as the fact that it constantly seems to break after it's been in the verse for a little bit. So again, this way, anyone who doesn't get a chance to see it can at least watch through this video. Now, on Wednesday, the monthly subscriber newsletter called The Jump Point was released. Now, there wasn't a lot in it, and I can't go into the details of it because you have to actually pay to see the content of it. But essentially, they dove into the content of some of the new missions that they're bringing in, the Gillies training mission specifically. And the narrative team has a short story that you won't soon forget. Now, to be honest, I don't normally read this subscriber newsletter, but there really wasn't anything in there that I thought was super amazing or important. But if you're really into the lore of the game, this might be a good thing you want to actually invest in getting, or a good reason to get the subscription. Next up, Thursday. Now on Thursday we had a Behind the Ships episode. It's the first one we've had in about a month, but I would expect to see quite a few more coming up in the near future here. Just with Fleet Week and Defense Con and the real big sales event, I think there's at least 3 or 4 ships that are going to be launched. So I would expect to see a few of these coming up. Now, this episode specifically was a relatively short episode. I think it was only about 4 minutes long. And it really, I'm going to say focused on the Star Lancer attack, but at the same time, they didn't really say a lot that wasn't already known. So the Star Lancer attack, or TAC, is based on the same chassis as the Star Lancer Max, but it doesn't have the bays that open on the bottom. Instead, it's going to have a hangar out of the top. Now, the hangar on the top can fit basically a Guardian. That's about it. And it'll also have med beds and drop seats. It's really kind of the Coles Notes of it anyways. So parts of the ship are a little bit more condensed, but everything that you saw at CitizenCon already really leads into everything that you would see in the video. That being said, it looks like a really good ship, and I think a lot of small organizations will grab something like this instead of something like the Polaris they previously would have. Just because with the smaller chassis, it's going to be a lot easier to fly, a lot easier to get into certain places, and with some of the nerfs that have happened this week, in the PTU anyway, it's going to be a lot easier to actually get the Star Lancer attack around. So I don't think I will be purchasing one myself, but I know a lot of people will be. Now, the real interesting thing to me is that when the Star Lancer attack went through its Behind the Ships, it was not put on sale immediately. This is the first time this year that they've done this, where they've done a Behind the Ships episode, but not actually put the ship on sale. So I'm curious how it's actually going to affect the sales that happen for it. I'm sure that it'll be a very popular ship anyway, which is probably why they led with it, and I think a lot of people expected to see it as well. Well, if you're like a lot of people and you're super excited to pick up the Star Lancer attack, you're actually going to have to wait for Invictus or Fleet Week to happen. Now, Invictus actually starts on May 15th, but you're probably going to have to wait for the MISC day, which is actually May 19th, before the ship will actually come on sale. I mean, Skagey's been doing things a little bit differently this year, so who knows, maybe they'll make it available right away. But I don't think you're going to see it until May 19th, so if you're interested, set that date in your calendars. And this brings us into Friday. Now on Friday, we got the calendar released for Invictus. So it looks like Grey Cat and Aegis are going to be on the 15th and 16th of May. Now I would actually expect to see a new Grey Cat vehicle on the 15th, but only time will tell on that one. On the 17th and 18th, we've got Origin, RSI, and Argo. I don't expect to see anything new coming out that day. On the 19th and 20th, we've got Consolidated Outland, MISC, and Mirai. Now, I do actually expect to see at least a Star Lancer attack on that day, but potentially another ship being released as well. Now on the 19th and 20th, there's Crusader and Umbro. Again, I don't expect to see anything new coming out on that day. And then on the 23rd and 24th, we've got Anvil. Anvil already has a lot of ships, but I am hoping to see another ship come out on the 23rd as well from Anvil. And then finally, on the 25th, we've got Drake. Now, I'm hoping to see another ship come out for Drake as well, but only time will tell, and it is a little bit strange. It's only one day long if they're releasing a new ship. Then everything wraps up on the 26th and the 27th. So for anyone who's never been to an Invictus before, what typically happens is on the manufacturer's given day, you can rent a series of those ships from those manufacturers, but you can't rent anybody on any other day. So for instance, on the MISC day, you can only rent the MISC ships. Now you do get the ability to rent those ships for typically 2 to 3 days, so they can kind of bleed over. So if there's a ship that you're interested in, I do suggest that you hop on, try to rent the ship on that manufacturer's day, just because it gives you the opportunity to fly it around and test it out for a couple of days. But then during the finale, all manufacturers' ships become available to be rented, at least the ones that were in the show, not necessarily everything, at least the ones that were in the show. That actually gives you a second opportunity to try the ships out. Now again, this is just how things typically go, so who knows if that's exactly how they'll go this year, but we'll see. On Friday, we also got our typical weekly This Week in Star Citizen email that came out, including this sneak peek. Now, I'm pretty sure that this is a sneak peek of the Guardian MX, the missile variant of the little Guardian ship. It would fit probably pretty nicely in with the MISC. They're both on the same day. Seems to be a pretty obvious one. But you never know. I mean, they do tend to give you just enough rope to hang yourself with these things. So again, only time will really tell. And honestly, they never really correlate them back to the sneak peeks anyway. So we could still be wrong even after it's released. Other than that, the weekly newsletter really didn't contain a lot. There is an International Bar Citizen going on this weekend, but unfortunately you have to live in one of 4 places to actually partake. And I don't live in Austin, Texas, Montreal, Quebec, Manchester, or Frankfurt, Germany. So I'm nowhere near any of those, so I can't actually partake in those. And I'm pretty sure most people don't live in those 4 either, so it really is a shame that we kind of miss out if we're not around. They did do a refresher on the fact they're changing the referral program, but there really wasn't any more details that were actually provided anyway, so that was kind of a waste. And there was really nothing else in the weekly newsletter of any real value that hasn't already been covered. And this brings us to the PTU updates for the week. Now you can tell they're really starting to gear up to actually release the PTU 4.1.1. My guess is that it will be next Thursday after the Inside Star Citizen episode, or sometime around then. They typically do release on Thursdays, which is why I say that. And they already promised last week that they would actually be doing an episode on what's coming in 4.1.1 next Thursday. So the timing all kind of fits. That being said, the PTU is also really kind of centered more around just small bug fixes this week as well. We're not putting any really big functionality in play. But that being said, there is still the redacted item on the release notes, or the patch notes, sorry. So who knows? I mean, maybe Monday we'll see something big come down the line. So the biggest thing that's really coming to the PTU this week is really the Idris tour that you're getting the video of right now, as well as the Invictus halls being open. Now, they've launched these numerous times for both of them. And in fact, tonight was the first time that the Idris tour was even relatively stable. In the previous renditions of it, they didn't have a no-fly zone around Area 18. So there was a ton of people that were just trying to land all of the ships they possibly could in the Idris. And a bunch of people that were trying to ram it to blow it up. And basically the Idris was just never really available to tour. Now, the Invictus halls are open. It does say that for the weekend in the PTU anyway, that they're going to rotate the manufacturer every 7 hours. Now, every time that I've gone into the Invictus halls, it's the exact same hall. It's like the showcase hall, maybe the finale hall. So it's entirely likely that there's actually just a bug and they're not properly rotating. Previously in the week, they were supposed to rotate every 2 hours. And the one night, the first night it came out, I actually sat there waiting for 2 hours to make sure it see what would happen when it did rotate, and it never did. So I'm guessing there's just another bug. They're probably going to address that early next week. Now, as far as some of the smaller things that have snuck into the PTU this week, from the patch notes anyway, they've brought back the animal control missions. That's where you go find some copian and you can try and control the population a little bit. They've also, later in the week, today, actually on Friday, they've reintroduced the restricted zones in Area 18, so there's no fly areas around the Aegis, so you can't go and try and land in there anymore. They also introduced a new energy weapon, the Quartz SMG. They also made a bunch of tweaks to it immediately after releasing it as well, but it seems to be a pretty overpowered weapon right now, as most of the new weapons come out to be, just because I know they want a lot of people to try them. They've also introduced the Hunt the Polaris mission, and then they made it a full co-op mission, so everyone on the server can actually partake in it. And finally, bounty missions were reintroduced. Now, this allows you to hunt other players, actually, if their bounty and their crime stats are actually high enough. It was something that used to be in before release 4.0, but now with the server meshing, I guess they've actually brought them back in. Now, the PTU is still very buggy. For instance, I tried to make a pretty short quantum flight earlier today, and it server errored on me 4 times. But they are releasing tons and tons of bug fixes on almost a daily basis. Now, one of the other things that I noticed when I was doing some testing tonight is that they've changed the height of the mining bags. So for instance, the prospector bags, they used to be like 2.1 SCU high. They were the size of like a 4 SCU container, but just a little bit taller, which meant that any ship that had a total of 4 SCU that you can stack, like 4 1 SCU boxes on top of one another, couldn't fit 2 of the prospector bags. It also meant that ships that could only carry 2 high, such as the Argo Raft, actually couldn't accept any prospector bags because the prospector bags were, like I say, like 2.1 SCU high. Now, I did notice in my testing, they're actually at 2 SCU high now. That means that you can actually fit the prospector bags in something like the Vulture, the Raft, and it really opens up the possibilities on what ships you can use to transport your bags back and forth when you're out mining. This is a very welcome change, and I know a lot of content creators called them out on this, so I'm really welcoming this change. Now, I didn't actually see it in the release notes anywhere, so I'm hoping it's not accidental. I'm hoping that it was something that they just kind of snuck in. Also, speaking of sneaking things into the PTU this week, they also snuck in the fact that you actually get your ore bags back immediately after you send your job to the refinery. Once you send your job down into the refinery to get it refined, you can just run back to the cargo bay, grab your ore bags out, throw them back on your prospector, and out you go. That's everything for Beyond the Jump Points this week. But if you're interested in a full summary video of what is going to be coming in 4.1.1, make sure that you subscribe to my channel because I will be releasing that early next week. Just a full comprehensive view of everything that I've gathered through all of the patch notes and all of the changes that I've noticed. So again, make sure that you like and subscribe. Thank you very much and have a great weekend.